Right, hi everybody, I'm Sarah McCarley from AgFirst Consultants in New Zealand. We're here to talk to you today about grafting. We've got a video showing Ross Wilson and Johan Duplessis from Sun Peach Orchard. And then we've got Paul Vogelaar from Kiwi Crunch, and throughout the video we're going to be talking to the different styles of grafting that each of these growers has chosen to implement in their orchard this spring, and then the decisions about why they've chosen grafting over a redevelopment block. The grafting techniques that the growers have used in the video include a rind graft and a cleft graft across a range of varieties of both apples, and we look at a pear block as well. And then we're going to be going to a mature block to look at the final outcome and discuss the production progression of that block.
Okay, we're in a really good example here of a block that made sense to graft. It was Granny Smith, which we were struggling to grow it really. We're just finding our climate is not making it easy for us to grow a green Granny Smith. And Granny Smith for us is only a sort of an average return. It's not a great return, and we've got the opportunity to graft to a higher, a better variety, one that's likely to give us a better return. So we've made the decision to graft this block over. Now the good thing about this block, it's only 2 years old. It's on a really nice rootstock. It's got a great fencing structure in place. The irrigation's all in place. So the infrastructure here is very, very good for grafting. It's likely to be very successful, but for it to be successful, which means that we've got a nice even canopy, we need the grafting technique to be 100%. And we've decided, because these are small stumps, if you zoom into the stump, you'll see it's only what would that be, 40 millimeters in diameter. It's not a big stump. We've decided that the best technique we can use for this is what we call a cleft graft. We've got no sap drawers, so we need to do it nice and early, and we can do a cleft graft. This is now the first week of September, before the sap started to flow, and we'll show you what our cleft graft technique now looks like. Okay, we're in the paddock with Johan Duplessis, who is the foreman here on the job, and Tapasa, who's from Samoa, is helping him. And Johan's going to explain the technique that he's using on these trees. Probably the first thing we need to talk about is there's been quite a lot of preparation to get rid of the tree. The tree was sort of 2.5 meters tall, bit of wood. We've mulched it all up. So the prunings are all got done. We've made a good paint on the top, and now we're ready to graft. So over to you, Johan.
What I basically try and do with a cleft, before I make my cleft, is to make sure I have good clean wood on both sides without any bumps or deviations, because that will just mean that your actual grafting wood or scion wood would sit cleanly and flatly on the cambium. So I saw my flat piece there. So I'm just basically going to make a little cleft. A bit like that. Then I'm going to use the cold chisel to just open my cleft in order to get the actual scion in. You just don't want to crack too far, so keep an eye on how far you actually go down. You just want enough space for your scion wood to go in. When that's done, I'll choose my scion wood. And this is probably one of the most important parts, is just to make sure you have a proper V on your scion. We like it nice and long, because that will create a bigger area for your cambium to actually sit on your wood. And now when I want to get perfect, I don't get that perfect. Let me give it another go. I actually just want a knife to do the work, instead of trying to force it, which I am doing there. I'm happy with that one. So you have a nice long scion exposed with a flat end, which seems to work better in this diameter of trunk where you insert it.
Can you just show this carefully? So the key thing with grafting is this cambium layer, which if I can see it, it's that green layer that's running about 2 millimeters inside the bark. That's the cambium layer. That's where the callus is going to form, and we've now got to, with a cleft graft, we've got to match that cambium layer up with the cambium layer that is in the stock, which you can see quite clearly is this line running down here. So we've got to get those two lines matched up as best as we possibly can, because that's where the callus formation is going to come. That's where we're going to get a nice quick knit if we can get them matched up. So Johan's going to show us now how he positions that sign to get that match.
Nice and tight inside, right on the cambium, and that should give you a secure graft. You can see the cambium there, that side isn't totally aligned. We can just put a bit more in. That's probably it right there.
And what you can see there is there's really nice contact of the wood all the way down that line and all the way up that line. And the skill is that cut on the sign wood has got to be nice and straight so that it's not waving, and you've got really nice contact on both cambiums, maximising the opportunity for it to knit together as quickly as possible.
Maybe make your space a bit smaller to accompany a slightly smaller sign wood. Again, just making dead sure that both sides of the cambium actually lines up and is touching. When you pull this out, it's a perfect fit, and that should take off like a dream. And behind me I have one of my colleagues, the passer, which will actually, just to speeden up the work, come through and does the sealing of your graft through tape and back full. Oh, sorry, last thing I nearly forgot is, as per Ross instruction, we're looking to expose 3 buds. In this case, I'm going to expose a third one, because that one is very low, and very often that can get filled up with paint. So I'm going to give it a third one in this case, and the same with this one. And that's basically the total graft technique.
Okay, so now comes the crucial part of sealing the graft up, because what we've got to ensure is that nothing dries out. And obviously if we left it like this, we've got a lot of exposed wood, this would dry out and would mean that the callus formation probably wouldn't happen. So we're using tape to seal up the graft as best as we can, and then we're going to put some paint on. So they've got a technique to fill this big cleft up first with the tape, so Tapas's going to show us how he does it. So that's now sealed with, but even with the tape, you can see we've still got white wood exposed, and we've still got some small air gaps, and of course we've got to seal the very top. We can't afford moisture loss, so now we're using the pruning paint to seal the plastic so it doesn't unwind, and then Tapas is going to fill all the gaps with the paint, and also the top of the graft is going to have a nice solid dollop so that there's minimal drying out possible. So what we're trying to do is to stop any drying out before the cambium has had a chance to knit together. It's now early September. The sap, we're not noticing strong sap flow yet, but it will come in the next few weeks. And so we're at the ideal time where the tree will start to become very active, and that callus formation should happen, we would think, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So this technique is risky because there's no sap drawer. Having a sap drawer gives a much lower risk with grafting, because you've got all this energy in this big rootstock going into a small amount of wood. So we find if you're going to use this technique, you've got to do it early, you've got to do it before the sap's flowing. And here we are, end of August, early September doing this. Green tip is about 3 or 4 days away, so we think the timing's right. And but what I say, if you're not using a sap drawer, timing is critical, and it's sort of the earlier the better. Okay, we're in another Granny Smith block here, which we've also decided to graft. These were about 7 years old, so you can see the size of the trunk is more significant. We've decided that because of the size of the tree, in this case we would rather leave sap drawers in place because it's more foolproof, it's safer, takes the pressure of that sap flow off the graft. So, and because we want to graft low, because again we want to take a twin stem up, this technique we leave the sap drawers up here. We've decided to leave 2 or 3 branches. In this case we've just left 2 branches, and Johan we've decided to graft on this side of the tree, so the sap drawers that have been left are away from the graft. Because what will happen is if the sap drawer is over the top of the graft, then we're minimising the amount of light that the graft will get. So this tree is now set up for what we call a wedge cut rind graft. So the first thing we want to do is show you the wedge that we put into the trunk ready for the graft.
Just to add on to Ross's, the other important thing about leaving your sap drawers on the further side is when you want to come through with your grafters and actually do the graft. If you look on this side, it makes it much more easier for the grafter to actually get inside and go and perform the grafting at the trunk. So to cut my actual wedge, I found we usually go about 400 mils off the ground. Through experience, I found that to start your cut at the top always makes much more sense to get it nice and even. So I'm going to start at the top at the angle, intending to go about halfway to just over halfway into the actual trunk diameter. Like that. And then very importantly is to get your flat cut as precise as possible to the rest of your wedge, and I'll explain why now. That basically gives you a wonderful flat area to actually perform your grafting on, and you have enough space for your actual graft to stick out onto, and more than enough wood still remaining for the actual sap to go through to the sap drawer. Also your sap drawers is on that side of the cambium, so the cambium naturally will go up to those right there.
Okay, so we've prepared the tree for a rind graft. A rind graft is where we cut a straight edge on the sign wood. We'll show it to you when we do it, and we open up the bark. When the bark's lifting, we can open up the bark and slide the graft in against the cambium, so you get a really nice fit. The requirement of this technique is we need to wait for the bark to lift, and that's a certain time of the year. Normally for us it's the end of September, early October. We like to do it as soon as the bark is lifting. So we're just going to show you how we test whether the bark's lifting. Now we don't think it is yet, but we're going to show you the test.
I'm going to try and do it from that side. So what I'll do is I'll just make a cut like you do with your regular graft, and using your grafting knife, you will just try and lift the cambium without tearing it. Or lift the bark. Oh, this is actually good. It's getting there. Now you see it's still tearing. You have to tear the bark off your cambium, which is not ideal. That must lift naturally without losing, I don't know if you can see inside there, but you see it's tearing pieces of the cambium off with your bark, which is not the ideal. It's getting there, but not quite yet. And if you come back in 2 or 3 weeks time and you do that process, you'll find the bark naturally separating from the cambium, giving you an ideal spot to actually insert your scion wood and perform your graft.
So Johan's just worked out the bark's not quite lifting, starting, but we reckon it's another maybe 10 days, 2 weeks away. So we're looking towards probably the 3rd week of September. So we'll go ahead and make this wedge cut in preparation, so we don't have to do it at the grafting time, and we'll make that cut. And what we do now is to make sure that all of that white wood is well sealed up with our pruning paint. So Tapassa's going to just now finish the job off. It's preparation just by sealing that right up. So Tapassa, if you want a nice liberal amounts of pruning paste to make sure it's well sealed. Okay, we're in a block here that was grafted using the wedge technique. These were grafted 3 years ago. So they're coming into their 4th leaf. And you'll see they've made exceptionally good growth. About 1.2 to 1.5 metres in the first leaf of each leader, and then about 1 metre in the second leaf. And then on this particular tree, you can see the new wood at the top is almost 1 metre long in its 3rd leaf. These trees, this was a rind grafting technique. It was done in October when the bark was lifting. We didn't crop it in the first 2 leaves. First and second leaf, we didn't crop it. We cropped it for the first time last year. And if you look down the canopy last year, it did about 40 tonnes to the hectare in its 3rd leaf. So it's performing. It's probably on target to do something like 60 tonnes this year, we think. And the benefit of what we've done here, we grafted quite low with the idea of taking a twin stem up. So the twin stem allows us to fill the space quicker, allows us to keep all the wood smaller, which is what we're trying to do with all our canopies. We've had to put quite a bit of effort into training the branches. That's the way I'd prefer to do it, rather than cutting them all off all the time, is to train them down, get the vigour out of them, get them cropping. And here, this was a 1.2 metre original spacing, so now these stems are 60 centimetres apart. This is actually on a 3.5 metre row spacing. So one of the things about grafting, you've got to graft a block that you know you're going to get consistency in. If you've got poor health on the underlying rootstocks, you've got variability, probably better to pull it out. But this one was a nice consistent block, and as you can see, when you look down the row, the consistency of the grafts tree to tree is pretty good. Not perfect, probably not as good as planting new trees, but not too bad. And certainly a lot cheaper per hectare to do this than to pull them out and plant with new material.
Hi, I'm Paul Vogelaar. I work for Kiwi Crunch in Hawke's Bay in New Zealand, and this is our hill road block. We made a decision of changing over our standard pink ladies, which would probably be a good 14 years old, into the next variety. So we're actually doing galaxies now, and we decided to graft these over. The advantage of doing the grafting over is the cheaper way of changing over the block. We don't have to pull out all the trees, we don't have to fumigate, we don't have to change the posts and wire if they're at the right distance, which these ones were, and so we can actually get these in production a lot quicker. So it actually saves us a lot of work for having to pull everything out and redesigning the whole thing. We we use the existing rootstocks or the existing trees and put 2 grafts on, and we put 2 grafts on to make sure that we've got, number one, have a backup, and also for the sap flow. What we find sometimes is that if we don't put 2 on the back side of one side, because there's no sap flow that comes through one side, it will actually die off and start rotting on one side. So having the 2 over here, it would actually make sure that it calluses over pretty well on both sides. We were lucky in this block that we had the right spacings. So these are 3.8 metre spacings. For the, maybe ideally we might want to go to 3 metres, but for the extra cost, it wouldn't make financial sense. So we are going to grow these as, probably going to grow them as twin leader, and then use the hedge trimming system to keep these narrow for the future. There's different ways of doing it. So some people will come straight through the middle and then put a graft. So they cut a graft like so. Slightly tougher wood because I've just got out of the back of the car. And they just slide it straight in, and so you've got 2 open doors, and then you slide it into the bottom of it. You can also cut one side and open only one side up, so then the wood is actually up against the side wood over here. It's in the main trunk and gets sap flow that way. Or the way I tend to do it is actually go 2 cuts, we just slightly tape it depending on the size of the wood, and then when we slide it in, the stick will actually jam up between both sides, so you get attachment all the way along here at the bottom and on this side as well. Everyone's got their own preference. I quite like the way I'm doing it, and I've got really good results, so we're talking about 99.5%. Yep, so it's really important to get the paint, tight around it takes the place of the plastic. It's really important that you don't leave any gaps. Even the white bit, it's on the back over here, and then sometimes I forget the top. Even if you just forget the top, it still won't take. So this is going to be multi-leader, so it's going to be four trees going up from each stem of each rootstock, and yeah, so we're just going to grow them, narrow, and yeah.
All right, thanks everyone. We've covered a few different grafting techniques there with the rind graft and the cleft graft, across a few different varieties and different blocks on both an apple and a pear variety. Another thing that we've talked to with the growers is why you would graft and scenarios where you wouldn't graft. So have a look across your orchard, especially in those improved blocks, and have a look at some scenarios where grafting might work for you.